Hello humans, hi. This is another reading vlog. Welcome. I am reading Misery by Stephen King. I've been in a bit of a reading slump lately. I've just been very occupied with work. So every time I try to read, I'm just always like, I'd rather just take a nap instead. And that's exactly what happens. But I started reading Misery, I want to say 2 days ago now. And which I don't want this to be the current theme for all my vlogging I'm reading, but I'm going on a trip. So I'm going to be taking this book with me and we're going to see how it works in the airport and on the flight and everything. It's a thriller that I'm quite enjoying. I'm not so far ahead yet. Only just started. But, and also sidebar, I remember when I wanted to get this book, I had seen that it had been like reprinted and like remodernized, but I made sure to get like the original only because I thought it was just like, it was due that. So I got like this one from some like thrift online bookstore and I'm not even sure this is like the original one, but it's probably close. It smells old too. But yeah, I'm going on a trip and I'm going to be reading this book, and so far so good. It's the writing style is so interesting. It reminds me of when I started reading and my cousins were reading like VC Andrews. It has that kind of writing style, and I'm actually curious to see or know if like it changed when they reprinted it or it's just the same thing. But the writing style is so interesting, very descriptive, so good, and it's very different from like the other Stephen King book I've read, The Outsider. But I'm enjoying it so far. I'm on like chapter 9 or so, and that's all I can say. I can't say anything else. I'm enjoying it. It's a good time, and we'll see how good this gets. This is also like a brief show and tell of what this book looks like on the inside. I don't know. This just reminds me of what I used to when I was younger, and books were still made like, quite thin and small and everything. But sometimes the chapters could be so short, and that really just, I don't know, it's I feel like it's a psychological thing. When chapters are short, it kind of helps you go through a book quicker. But yeah, I was just showing what it looks like on the inside and all that. Hello humans. Hello. I've been reading Misery. I'm on the last day of my vacation. Well, vacation. I just took the weekend to travel, and I'm having a good time. I will say this writing style, I'm so like, I don't know a lot about how Stephen King writes. I've read enough of his books to like be able to distinguish what his writing style is. But this writing style is very not confusing, but very, you have to pay attention. It's not a book I think you can skim through. You probably can if you want to just like jump to like the thrilling and scary parts, quote unquote. But there's so many things I'm paying attention to that I'm like very intrigued by. So I'm still at the beginning parts of this book where Paul Sheldon, a writer who he got in a crash and then his favorite fan kidnapped him. I'm still in the early parts where he's still trying to process what's going on. So it's been a couple of weeks, according to him, he thinks anyway, and she's been coming back and forth, giving him medicine, and because she's a nurse allegedly, and just feeding him basically and hydrating him, and he just like eats, takes medicine for his legs, which are kind of like crippled at the moment, and he just goes back to sleep. But every time he's awake, he starts to like imagine and just think about what could be happening outside if anyone is looking for him. What could happen if, say, XYZ. And I am really enjoying how Stephen King is portraying this author, because he does something where he puts his hands on his eyes and he just imagines, and he's thinking of, maybe there's a cop right now. The cop is driving, it's snowing, and the cop is wearing a sweater and he's, bundled up, and he sees my car, and this cop is going to come and ask questions, and he's just thinking far. And I thought this is something a lot of us is just using it vaguely. A lot of us do, and I really enjoy that. Again, I haven't gone too far, but I'm really enjoying the character of Annie Wilkes, or Wilkes, if that's her name, the lady who kidnapped Stephen. Paul. She's very interesting. Nothing too much about her that we know, but she's very interesting. However, a kicker. So Paul had written a book because he's been writing like a series on a character called Misery Chastain. Now, he finished a book earlier before he was crashed. That was a different thing entirely. And she got his manuscript. That was the only existing manuscript, and she read it. And she's like, well, what the fuck is this? Because this is not about Misery. And she was already upset because Misery, in this book that he wrote as well, died in childbirth, which I believe the book was like written like written for like, in the earlier days. So he was explaining to her like how that's just what happened because they didn't really have enough medical processing and all that to kind of help mothers like that. So she died during childbirth, and she's like, no. And she said something very interesting where she's like, you're God for this fictional story. So you killed her so you can bring her back. And she's saying, no, you need to write this again. So fuck what you just wrote. And she brings in like a stove and tells him to burn his manuscript. And he's thinking about it where he's like, no, I just finished this book. It might not sell as much as Misery, but I really, really love this book and I want to sell it. But like, what the fuck is she talking about? And he had to like contemplate on how like, it's either he burns the book or she doesn't give him painkillers for what's going on. And he's basically not having that. So he burns his manuscript and his my imagination has been going wild on what could be happening, who the fuck this lady even is, if he's going to just die here or if she's going to get caught. And that's kind of the same thought process I'm having now. I'm very curious. Now, I haven't really read a lot of novels where it takes place in like one setting, with just him being in, and it's thus far anyway, with him being in the guest room, and there isn't like a lot of like locations. I don't know if I'm going to get bored quickly, but I'm biased because I think it's because it's Stephen King and his reputation precedes him. I'm thinking obviously there's going to be a lot more than what I expect, and I'm also just imagining with this one setting that I know of, a lot can happen. And that's really, really interesting and really intriguing as well. So I'm heading back to the airport in like an hour or two, and I'm going to continue reading the book because I'm going to be getting to the airport early. Now, when I was coming to my trip, I'm in my friend's house in Florida, I didn't read the book as much as I wanted to because the airport got hectic. I couldn't read on the plane. Then I got sleepy. I had a headache, but I read a little bit at the airport, and I was like, But this morning, throughout the whole trip, the whole weekend, is when I really read the most. So I'm excited, and I'm probably halfway through Misery. Wow, for a brief second, I kept thinking to myself, I wonder how much longer I can enjoy or appreciate the one setting of this book. And the moment I said that, which was probably in the clip before this one, the moment I said that, so for context, again, this author got, in an accident, and he's basically being held captive by one of his favorite fans or whatever, right? Basically, the moment I said that, something happened where, because he's been like constantly giving like painkillers by this Annie, she goes out in town to get something because she bought him a typewriter, and she says, okay, the book you've written before based on Misery, who is a fictional character in this book that this author had written about, long story short, Misery had died in the book that he wrote, and she didn't like that. So she said, Misery died, however, find a way, work it out, break her back. So she bought him a typewriter, and he had an issue with the paper or something, so she had to go back into town. While she was in town, he was on a wheelchair and he was in a lot of pain. But there's a bit of an altercation that they had earlier, and she got a bit, crazy, and like her hairpins fell on the floor. So he picked one of the hairpins up and is trying to like, unlock the door to get out of the room. He didn't really think as far as like getting out the house because there's a snowstorm and everything. He just wanted to get out the room and see what was going on so he could get like some painkillers. Luckily for him, the guest bathroom was across from the room where he was being held. So he goes in, finds a lot of medicine, and then he kind of takes a little stroll in the house and like rolls himself down to the living room. And mind you, I was reading this part on the plane and it was so tense. I can't explain it, but like, because it's been set up where she could come at any time, and they've talked about how it was hard for him to get out the door with the wheelchair. It was so difficult for him to even move. He's in a lot of pain. He hasn't taken the meds yet, so there's a lot going on. And then he's wheeling himself in the living room, and he basically hits one of her like antiques or something, and it falls to the floor. And he forgets where it was in the midst of all the chaos. Oh, sensational. And whilst he's there, he hears her, come back up. He hears the car and he's trying to go back in. I'm not going to like deny the whole book, but it's fucking intense. And after that happened, I was like, okay, I'm locked in. This is like at page 100. And before page 100, the book was still going, but it was going a bit too slow for me. I kind of wanted a bit more, and then I got that. He started writing Misery's Return. Basically, he's trying to revive a character that already died for Annie. So that's almost like you're in this whole different world, and I'm really, really appreciating it because Misery, his book, is set way, way before. Like, people were using horses for transportation kind of way back. And it's really, really interesting to kind of, I've said really so many times, but it's interesting to see how things kind of functioned then, because I don't think by my own free will I would read a book that was set in like, ways back ago. But this is really interesting. I'm having a good time, and I had to bring myself back to say, oh wait. This is what the book is about, because I was getting so invested in Misery, and this is like his second manuscript, let's say, because he had written a chapter before, and he was like, no, that's lazy. If you're going to revive a character, do it right. So he's writing like a second draft, and it's really interesting. And he actually compared Annie to like a publicist and editor, where editors have to like kind of give you feedback based on what they're getting paid and on like deadlines and everything. But she's reading as a passionate reader, and she's like, you can't be lazy, you can't like, cheat your way through a storyline. And there was a very, very interesting hook on how to write a story, how to like give a hook, how to draw a character, and how to make people interested. And I thought that was really, really good. And it referenced like, when Annie was a kid and she would like go see plays, and at the end of each play there would be a cliffhanger that would make people come back the next week, which is very much like what most shows are doing now on television. And I'm talking too much, I'm giving you so much information, but so far so good. I'm having a good time, and I can't wait to see what else happens in this lovely book. Good morning. Well, it's morning. I'm reading before I head to work, and I have to say two things. This book is either going to make me an amazing writer in my future, in my very near future, or it's going to put a pedestal on all the books I read moving forward. And that's happened a lot of times with books I've read. So like, for weird context, I went to Beyonce's concerts, and that's kind of put me on a pedestal as to where I don't think I could go for any concert unless it's like, and even if I go, that's like the bar, which is very high, but it's Beyonce. But this book is so interesting. The writing style is so interesting. And when I said in the beginning that I was bored, I don't retract that statement, but now I'm reading what was making me bored, but I appreciate it a lot more because I have a lot more context. I know what's going on in the story. I know where this writer is. I know how that writer, I mean Paul Sheldon, the guy who's been held hostage. I know where he is. I know what he thinks like. I know what happens when he like goes into a trance or tries to escape. When he's like in pain, and Annie doesn't bring him his painkillers like she always does. I know like what his daydreaming looks like. And for anyone who writes alike or who reads alike, you can understand what it is when someone just like travels in their mind and starts like filling in bubbles and filling in spaces because there's nothing else like to give them context or whatever. That's what's going on, and I love it. Now, away from Paul, Annie is a very, very interesting antagonist because ideally she's very she's a terrible person. She's not the best, but she's very interesting. And I hate to be that person who like gives good mannerisms or good words to like the bad people, but she's very flawed and fucking messed up, but she's very interesting. I don't know how else to say it, but like she has her days. So like there's a moment in this book where a tax collector comes and like he's about to put a lien on a house. I guess she hasn't paid a mortgage or something, however that works. And Paul kind of sees how it's affecting her, and he's like, just go to my wallet and take $400 and balance it up with whatever you have, which I think she needs to pay like 500 or something, and it's all sorted. And obviously this book is wild ago, so that's a lot of money. In hindsight, she was like, are you sure? Thank you. She was a bit conflicted. And Paul made a very, very interesting analysis where he's like, for someone who's done lots of fucked up things, her principles and what she would accept are still a bit skewed in a very like good way. So you could kidnap me, you could kidnap me, but you're going to give me food and give me painkillers so I don't die. You could hit me or punch me, but you're still going to like talk about my writing, criticize it in a very good way and not be like other editors. And you could like be in so much pain and so much debt, but you still want to collect my money even though the money's right there in my wallet. Very, very interesting antagonist. And I'm at a point where she's having like a manic depressive episode. At least that's what Paul is analyzing. And he says, when a manic depressive personality begins to slide deeply into a depressive episode, one symptom he or she may exhibit is acts of self-punishment, slapping, punching, pinching, burning oneself with cigarette butts. He was suddenly very scared because I feel like this might skew who Annie is and she might just be a bit more fucked up. I don't know. And obviously he only knew that because he had to like do research for the Misery books that he wrote, that were in his catalog. Anyway, very, 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 very interesting thus far. I'm excited. I'm going to be done with this probably this weekend and we will see. But so far so good. It's a good time. Morning. This is a quick pop-in. I'm almost done with Misery. And I think I found like the one reason as to why I might not like this book. So earlier in this vlog, I had mentioned how I wonder how this book would like react or be with it being in just in one setting. And what I noticed is that the author, Stephen King this time, did a good job in he did a good job in like taking us places that have been like in this author's mind and by the author now Paul, these characters' mind. So there's a segment in the book where Annie kind of goes away for a couple of days and Paul, you know, goes down the house and he sees like a scrapbook, which is basically like Annie's life across the years, and then he realizes that she has a murder like trail right behind her, which is it gets really scary and it's very premeditated as well. And that kind of helps because like memories and all that. However, I will say after a while it does get a bit tiring because like there's only one narrative that's happening. It's like you want to know after a while in this book. Because trust me, you don't get you will get carried away, you will enjoy getting carried away, but sometimes you're like, okay, this is it feels like a bit of a filler to me. But I will say that after a while, with this author, his mind just travels and he starts to remember or imagine things and it gets a bit, you're like, okay, I see what you're doing, Stephen. I see what you're doing. And then it also helps that he's writing another book on misery. You know, the Misery's Return, which is the book that Annie is forcing him to write. So you can kind of see how when he gets a bit tired of like what's happening in the current reality, traveling into like Misery's world is really interesting. And the book that he's writing gets a bit interesting as well. And they're like interesting key points with that as well. But Annie's fucking insane. That being said, she's fucking insane. I get to a part where something really, really gory happens in the book. I'm not going to spoil it, but fucking hell, it's ridiculous. And I just wanted to pop in and say that. I'm gonna watch on the book. It's really, really. I say this sometimes. You read a book that brings you to a reading slump, and it kind of like jumps out. Just like go through like. I mean, I'm sure everyone has gone through this where you just like go down a rabbit hole of other books that you read after you read a really, really good book. This book has kind of jumpstarted like the right time in me. For a while, I've been writing. I mean, I've been writing, but like, I've been in a bit of a doozy. But now I'm like, ooh, I understand how I wouldn't mind writing, and it's really, really good. I enjoy it, and but yeah, I will say again, the way Stephen King kind of is able to make you travel in a book that only has one setting is really, really interesting and it's really good. And you have to be really, really good to be able to do that and keep a reader's attention because most people will be bored after a while. But it's really, really good, and I give kudos to that. I'm about done. I'm finishing up. And the way this book is leading up to what I hope the ending is, it's killing me. It's killing me. There was a little bit, I mean, I can't really spoil the ending because the ending is really, really good, but there's a bit where she has to move Paul, Annie, has to move Paul to the basement because, like, she had a police officer come earlier and something happened. So she has to move in, and now her past is basically catching up to her, and there's lots of like investigations and stuff, and it's fucking, it's intense. It's so intense, and because like the chapters are so, most of the chapters are like a bit like, you know, short. It's just like picking up. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It's delicious. And then, interestingly, Paul is starting to have a bit of sympathy for her, which I'm a bit confused because like many a times he's had the opportunity to like yell and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm here, yeah, come help me." But then she had told him that like if you yell, it's gonna be at the cost of their lives. Basically, she basically threatened him. So he's treading really, really carefully, and he has a plan of his own for when he finishes writing the misery novel for Annie, and it's, oh my god, it's gonna be contemplating. I'm basically like a couple pages and I'm trying to see what's gonna happen, and it's, first of all, I hope he makes it out, and secondly, I hope Annie, she needs to get locked up, but like who fucking knows at this point? And this is so interesting. It's so interesting. I am feeling oof. Okay. But yeah, I'll be back. Believe it or not, I've been struggling with the lighting for maybe 10 minutes now. And that's not the point. The point is, this is a day, or let's just say 2 days later, after finishing Misery, and I've let my thoughts marinate. And this is a really good book. What's that there? That's a really good book. Now, I'm just going to go right off the bat and tell you what I did not like about this book. And it's not so like a standing decision I could make about the author Stephen King as a whole. But in this whole book, what I did not like, but also happens to be something I enjoyed in some parts where there were lots of like fillers for me. They did feel like fillers. So I had mentioned that there were, after a while, everything had been set. You kind of knew what the premise was, you knew what was going on, you knew what the stakes were, and then it just felt like everything went on pause, and then we went on a lot of like adventures, quote unquote, in this author's mind, and that helped your imagination, but also aided and helped in prolonging the length and the duration of how this book could have been. In my personal opinion, that's the only thing I did not like, and it helped in some ways, and in some ways it just felt a bit like, let's get back to the point. Something I did not like. Right now, I enjoyed this book as a whole. I have been saying this for maybe over a year now. This book is something that I wanted to like. The premise has been so interesting to me. It felt so real. I remember someone telling me, actually, scratch that, no one told me, but I remember reading somewhere, comment on TikTok, that this book came up because Stephen King was allegedly sober and his publisher or his agents was like, hounding him to write something, and this book came out of it. I don't know how much I believe it. I don't know how much of that is true, but at the same time, this could have happened. If Stephen King came out years from now and said, "Oh, this actually happens to me," I wouldn't be surprised, because it's very, very chilling, and that's what really aids most of Stephen King's books as well. It's like they're not so far from the truth. Whatever lens you want to look at them through, it could be as true as possible. And it was a good book. I'm just reminiscing, and I've seen like now, because I try to stay away from like the actual movie clips. Fuck, I love this book. I really love this book. I really, really did enjoy this book. And yeah, go ahead and read it. I recommend. I actually do recommend it. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. I only had the one reason as to why I did not really enjoy it. But other than that, it was such a ride. It was such good writing. It was such a good way to keep you engaged as well, I will admit. And the way he also incorporated the writing of another novel inside one, in and of itself was really brilliant, and it didn't become a problem, and I really appreciated that as well. And then the way the book ended, there's a climactic scene at the end. Stephen King, again, like I said this earlier, but he played with my balls. He turned me on and then gave me blue balls, because that's the only way I can explain it. It was something. It's a really good book. I feel like there's so many things I want to say that I can't really say, because like they're just not coming out in words. But it was really good writing. I've said everything I need to say in this vlog. Please, go check this book out. If it's been on your book on your list for a while, I recommend it. It's pretty good, and it's pretty worth it. And I dog-eared a lot of things as well, because like there were just a lot of gems. I'm trying to see if I could just find one for you off the rip, and I think I have. Okay, there was a really interesting part as to where he was talking about how people wrote books and how like the writing of a book came to be. And just to go off the bat here, was like, he understood, obviously this is a little context that you're going to get, but he said he understood what he was doing now as trying to have an idea. Trying to have an idea wasn't the same as getting an idea. Getting an idea was a more humble way of saying I'm inspired, or eureka, my muse has spoken. And then, with getting an idea, half the story existed, full-blown in his mind, and the rest was rapidly falling into place. He felt jivey, happy, almost drunk. The muse had arrived, every bit as welcome as an unexpected check in the mail. He had set out to get a video recorder and had gotten something much more better instead, had gotten an idea. The other process, trying to have an idea, was nowhere near as exalted or exalting, but it was every bit as mysterious and every bit as necessary, because when you were writing a novel, you almost got roadblocked somewhere, and there was no sense in trying to go until you'd had an idea. But if you needed to have an idea, boredom could be to a roadblock novel what chemotherapy was to a cancer patient. Such interesting way to perceive it, and I agree, because I am a writer, and there's a very, very stark difference between sitting and being like, okay, something comes to me, let's write, in comparison to where, oh, this happened, that's the story. Now, just writing it, obviously, you're not going to like, some people are lucky, but you're not going to go full blown, sit down and everything's done. But once you've gotten the premise, you've gotten the idea, filling in the blanks is a lot more easier than trying to say, okay, let's think of something, let's write something. It's amazing. But there's a lot more gems that in this book. You can see I've dug at a lot of parts, and amazing read. I can't wait to see the next. So another Stephen King book that's sitting on my shelf right now is Christine, but there are a lot more that like I have on my like TBR that I want to read, and we shall see which one I read next. But until then, thank you for watching. I've been Danny, and I hope you enjoyed this vlog. And if you did, I do a lot more vlogs like this. Just go check them out and watch out for the next one. And share with your friends, share with anyone who thinks wants to watch read Misery or watch Misery. I think I will watch the movie now because I watched the trailer which came out eons ago and it looks really good. And yeah, it's been fun. But till next time, bye bye.